What's up, Jim?
Doing great, Jared. How you doing, man?
Doing well, man. Had
Good.
my last class for the semester today, so
That boy. That
yeah,
boy.
big deep breath.
Big deep breath. Good for you. Am so as you're like coming into relief at the end of the semester, I'm beginning the panic of realizing I'm gonna have to teach again
Yeah,
next semester. Like the sabbatical fantasy world, right? Like I'm gonna have to leave the narcissistic womb of sabbatical, right?
exactly,
And step into a cruel, cruel real. Like I'm about to be castrated, right? Uh, so here we go. Here we go.
exactly.
Exactly. Right. So hey, I tell you what, I am like almost tingling with excitement over what we're going to do today, right? So this
Nice,
what we
nice.
read was big, I thought.
I thought so
So
too.
let's go to it. But first, what are you reading this week besides
So I'm
Fromm's?
continuing the book by Ong called "Fighting for Life," and then actually, I don't know if you have seen this collection, but there's the University of Chicago Encyclopedia Britannica collection of the great books.
Yeah.
Done by Mortimer Adler and the like. But there's actually a 10-part collection called The Gateway to the Great Books.
Nice.
And they have like 3 volumes on imaginative literature, and then there's like Man and Society and a couple other ones. So I
Huh.
actually picked up the first volume is just an introduction, and then a syntopicon of just those 10. But I picked up the second, and it's imaginative literature, and the first work is Robinson Crusoe.
Oh
So I started
wow.
reading Robinson Crusoe.
Good for
It's kind
you.
of a interesting, like it goes starts in England and then kind of ends up in America with a lot of the different stories it picks. But I figured over the Christmas break I'm gonna read that kind of stuff. So
Good for you. Good for you. Yeah, so my I don't have a fiction book going right now because I continue with the lifestyle choice that is Wendy Painting's aberration in the heartland of the
for
real,
sure,
right? So I'm what am I? I've broken halfway on that thing. I bet you by next week I'll probably be done with it.
nice,
And it is absolutely incredible. We might have to get you caught up to speed so we can do a full episode on it at some point.
absolutely.
Right. In addition to that, I also began, and I'm embarrassed to say this is the first time I've read this. Hippolyte's The Genesis and Structure of Hegel's Phenomenology of Spirit,
Oh,
which
okay,
is it's sort of the one of the really canonical texts in Hegelianism in France in the 20th century. So I think we've mentioned Kojève in the show, and
Mhm.
like Kojève had this like huge influence on people like Sartre and Merleau-Ponty and a lot of the existentialists. Well, Hippolyte published a bit after Kojève and this monumental book, and then he has a follow up, which is his own stuff called I think it's Logic and Existence. And actually, Foucault and Deleuze were students of his, right?
Nice.
But they come out of it like hating Hegel, right? Okay,
Oh, sure.
but anyway, but I tell you, reading Hippolyte's Structure and Genesis, oh my gosh, it's absolutely incredible. Like it's kind of like the cheat code to the phenomenology of spirit. I mean,
Nice.
it's controversial, right? It's a framing of it, but it's one of those I'm like underlining whole pages because there's so many insights. So
That's awesome.
I'm really digging that. So if my students in my Hegel course next semester are going to be unloaded on. So I'm building momentum. Right. Cool. All right. But this week we are going to go ahead and sully further into Fromm's Escape from Freedom, right? Which
Yep.
we began last week. Okay. And I think like our plan is that we are going to really hang heavily on what, for our money, is the central chapter of that book, right?
I think so too.
What he
Yep.
calls the three mechanisms of escape. Okay. And in the three mechanisms of escape, sort of the central theme is what he calls the authoritarian character or the authoritarian personality. Okay.
Hmm.
Uh, so that's where we're going to hang today. And we think that once you've got that, you really got what Fromm has to teach us in this book. And it's
Totally.
pretty cool. Totally. Okay. And the resonance with contemporary topics, like, I mean, torn from today's headline stuff is going on. So in a lot of
Absolutely.
ways, I want to like recommend to the Legion right now that if you want to understand the moment we're in, which means to understand us. And I don't think anyone gets out of this critique alive, right? Okay, like no one is unscathed by this critique, I think, right?
Hmm.
If you want to understand yourself and where we are right now, socially, politically, culturally, I would say read this chapter. Like
Absolutely.
I don't think I could like really say this more strongly, right? So,
Yes.
however, what do you have to do to get your hands on it? Read that chapter because
Totally.
there's a reflection of us in that, right? Even though he's writing this
Absolutely.
in 1941, I think it is no less applicable today. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think your point about, what we're talking about here is also like, politically speaking, we're talking about right and left. Nobody goes unscathed in
No,
this.
yeah, yeah. Like we
It's
kind of
just as true.
joked about woke last time, right?
Yeah.
And I think that joke applies in two directions here. Is like I
Totally.
think like whatever side of the woke, not woke, anti woke debate you're talking to, I think Fromm is going to see it as an expression of a kind of authoritarian personality, right?
Absolutely.
Or one of the mechanisms that he's going to talk about here. So
Yep.
cool. Okay, and so like before we get into that, he does give us a chapter that we both looked at called The Two Aspects of Modern Freedom, which is sort of redundant, I think,
Hmm.
from what goes on before. But I just want to mention just like what these two aspects are, right? And he's kind of cagey about ever really naming it in that chapter. But I think the two aspects are there's a negativity of freedom and there's a positivity of freedom, affirmative freedom. Okay, there's a negative freedom and affirmative freedom. Very Hegelian, okay, of what he's doing here. And so on the one hand, freedom happens when what he calls these primary ties or primary bonds are cut. Okay. And it's basically, like we were just joking about it a minute ago, like this Freudian castration. Like you're in a safe narcissistic bubble of some sort where you've not had to develop a self distinct from the outside world, right? And suddenly something's happened to interrupt that narcissistic bubble. And you realize you and the outside world are not the same thing. Okay.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so now you are free of something, like you're free from something, like the primary ties have been broken and you're on your own. Okay.
Hmm.
With no direction home, as it's been said. Okay. Um, and so like that's phase one of freedom is negative. Okay.
Yes.
And now note, and it's interesting, like everybody has this to say, like whether it's Heidegger, whether it's Hegel, right? Whether it's Freud, whether it's Sartre, right? Uh, all have to say that will be characterized by anxiety. Kierkegaard, right? Everyone will say that first moment of freedom is first and foremost characterized by anxiety, angst, like the uncanny, unheimlich, right? That you
Hmm.
suddenly realize you are not at home in this world and you're going to have to make a home for yourself. And
Hmm.
that means you will be responsible for it. Okay.
Hmm.
Um, and so that's where the flight risk is going to come because a lot of us, all of us are like, I'm not digging the anxiety. I'll go hide.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. But then the other moment of freedom, the affirmative moment of freedom is where you actually make something. Okay, where you actually exercise your creative human power, right? To actually make something, to make bonds for yourself, right? And primarily for Fromm, and this is the Hegelian Marxist in him, in the good part of it, is this means meaningful work, right? And meaningful social relations, right? Like
Hmm.
you're part of a community that matters and you're doing work that matters. But the thing for him is it has to be work in a community that you have chosen to be a part of, right?
Yes.
That you take an ownership for being in it. Okay. The problem though is that will always be done in fear and trembling, right? Because
Yeah.
uh you have nothing to fall back on. Okay. And interestingly, so many of the thinkers, like almost all of the ones that we've really, spent time with on the show thus far, all see this as like they all have the same kind of diagnosis of the modern situation, right?
Hmm.
Where
Hmm.
we've awakened from our narcissism, our primary bonds are no longer trustworthy to us. And even if we go back to those bonds, we have to admit it is our doing that we've gone back to them. So there's always an angst to this. And and the risk now for him, for Fromm, is that we will take one of these three very typical avenues of escape, right? Which is a way of dodging the anxiety and like not doing an affirmative version of freedom, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Makes sense. Would you say it's a fair summary thus far?
Yeah, yeah, I think that, and it's interesting because, almost immediately I start thinking more like on political terms here,
Yeah.
but we're talking about economic terms, we're talking about social relations terms, we're talking about work terms, we're talking about
He
literally
put
every
out through
single
a history of
interaction.
economics. A lot of this through a history of economics. He does. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and we kind of mentioned it in the previous episode, but I can't unsee now even the ability of, yeah, we're free, but then all of a sudden a brand shows up and says, hey, unless you buy me and you're not a part of this community and you're powerless without me, you
Yeah.
know, it's a different kind of authority. It's not necessarily the stamp of Franco or something like that, but it is
Yeah.
an internal consciousness that happens within you of I'm left out unless I buy this thing or unless I
Yes.
subscribe to this thing. So in the same way, and we'll get into it because I think the third path of the escape for freedom, talking about even like within familial situations where you're like, oh, I put on this mask
Yeah.
because I'm expected to act a certain way and I'm not free to really be who I am or even decide who I am.
I mean, our boy Fromm here is going to go real hard in the paint against bourgeois conformism.
Oh yeah.
Right. Right.
Big time.
In its familial form, in its consumerist form, right, its political form, he's going to go hard in the paint there. So there's three mechanisms of escape, right? There's authoritarianism, there's destructivism, and what does he call the third one? It's
Let's
autonomous
see.
conformity or something. He's got a funny name for it. Let me find it. Here we
It
go.
is
Automaton,
automaton conformity. Yeah.
automatonic conformity, which is basically middle class bourgeois conformity,
Yep.
right? Consumerism, right? So those are the three. Those are the three mechanisms of escape. Okay. Now, should we jump right into authoritarianism?
Still, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So you have to be careful because like when we hear authoritarianism today, like we think of it solely in terms like the authoritarian person is the person who is like the dominant alpha dude, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Fromm would say yes, yes. However, it's not only and not even primarily the dominant alpha type that is the authoritarian. Okay. And you get in this chapter in this section on authoritarianism this really really brilliant interpretation and application. I'm sure it's controversial among Freudians, but it's a really brilliant interpretation and application of Freud's notion of sadomasochism. All right.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. And what Fromm is going to argue here is that the authoritarian personality is the sadomasochistic personality. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important for understanding this that we always say it's sadomasochism, right? Because Fromm points out there is a dialectic interconnection between sadism and masochism. Like for him,
Mm-hmm.
every masochist is a sadist and every sadist is a masochist, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. They are two symptoms of the same problem, and those symptoms manifest just depending on the external situation, right? Okay. And so what's the internal situation is that on this reading, the sadomasochist is first a personality type that happens, right? When the individual has not been allowed to form himself, right?
Yes.
That has not been granted any personal autonomy, right? So
Yes.
like the sadomasochist personality, according to Freud, and you know help yourself disagree, uh, any clinicians who may be listening, okay, but the sadomasochist personality comes about when you have someone who's just been over dominated, right, as a child, such that they never had space to develop a true sense of self. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when they are faced with having to decide for themselves about their life, right, they're unable to do so, right,
Mm-hmm.
because they're alone. They have no primary, they've lost their primary ties, right? Think of it in Fromm's terms. They have no primary ties. They've been kicked out of the womb. They've been kicked out of the nest, right? So they have nothing to decide for them anymore, but they do not have the power or the will or like for Fromm's term, potency to decide for themselves. So what are they going to do? They want to escape from their very individual selfhood.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. And there's two ways you can do that. You can just simply give yourself up entirely to the will of someone else, right? And that's the masochistic tendency. So, like, what's the ultimate non-self? It's like enjoying someone else enjoying hurting you,
Yes.
right? Okay. It's like I'm so tired of having a self, I will just surrender myself to the point of Jared that I enjoy it when he beats me.
Yes.
Right. Like that's the masochist. Okay.
Yeah. And in true
Uh,
Fromm fashion, within the first three paragraphs of that section, he says the most frequent forms in which masochistic strivings appear are feelings of inferiority, powerlessness, and individual insignificance.
yes.
It jumps right into it.
Yep. Exactly. He just goes. Yeah. Right. Yeah. He just funny. He doesn't hold his cards. He tells you where he's
He
going.
does not.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I feel so insignificant. It's a relief to me then to have someone else suck up all the oxygen in the room.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. To the point that I might even enjoy it when you treat me badly. Right.
Yes.
Like when you're
Well,
insulting me, that's cool because now at least I can defer myself to you in accepting the insult. Right.
yes. Well, and I'm sure I'm going to bring this up multiple times in this episode, but I cannot help but I'm going to have a long history of heavy metal listening.
Yeah.
And there are so many songs about I would rather feel something than nothing, even if
Yes.
that something is pain,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like I would rather you hurt me than just disregard me,
Yeah.
right?
Because at least like think of it, like if you're like you've just been ruined by your father, right? And your father gave you no space to be yourself at all and just like constantly told you how horrible you are, right?
Yep.
At the only sense of acceptance you ever got is when he was screaming at you.
Yep.
Dude, like that's the only time you mattered was when he was screaming at you, right? And so like you have like a zero sense of yourself and you're just willing to absorb yourself into this like maniacal person now, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, and also though Fromm points out is like what's the sadist? Well, the sadist is also obsessed with the other, right?
Yes.
To the point that the sadist cannot tolerate the how will put it, like the unyielding presence of another, right? Like
Yes.
to use like Lacanian terms, it's that the sadist cannot tolerate an other in their presence whose desire is a mystery, right?
Yes.
Like your
Yes.
desire has to be my desire, right? Okay, your desire can't be your own private desire. So that means, in as much as you're not me, I have to hurt you. I
Mm-hmm.
have to destroy
Mm-hmm.
you. And so, like, what is the sadist doing? The sadist is absorbing everything into itself, but to absorb everything into yourself is essentially to not be a self at all, right? To
Yes.
not be differentiated, right? So both sadism and masochism on this like Frommian Freudian take are returns to a sort of narcissistic state, right?
Yes.
A loss of individual self, a loss of any distinction between you and the outside,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, and it's this weird relationship, and I like the idea of it being a dialectic because what ends up happening, and I think of like in terms of just I don't want people thinking on terms of just like dictators and that kind of authorities, but just people in some sense of authority or leadership that can use manipulation in both terms for this. Right.
Yeah,
So one, they're sadists in the sense that they want to hurt you and they want your desires to be or their desires to be your desires.
yeah,
But at the same time, they kind of want to get caught hurting people.
yeah,
Right? Like they like the idea of getting caught, getting hurt themselves.
yeah, totally, totally, yeah. And so, like you can see it. I mean, you can like without being like parochially or partisan political, but like, look, right now in the states, we have this situation where there are people who are very happy to submit right to a political personality. I'm going to say a political personality, right? And just like give themselves over to that, right? As a kind of identity. So what happens is where we were in a moment of like radical deterritorialization, like everything's changing, right? Right. And it was very easy then to say, I don't know what the hell I am. I don't want to decide it. I can just throw myself into this other personality, right?
Yep.
And it doesn't matter how much this guy embarrasses us. It doesn't matter how much this guy offends us. It doesn't matter, what this guy does that like completely contradicts everything he promised that he would do or said he was, all that stuff, right? Doesn't matter if it's humiliating to you. That's the point. You are giving yourself up. So you're disburdened of selfhood, right?
Hmm.
But at the same time, notice how it's coupled with a kind of sadism, right? And in that is built in this enjoyment of seeing other types of people humiliated, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
do you see what I mean? Like whether it be immigrants or other races or other sexual orientations, really enjoying to seeing them humiliated, right? So you can see there, just depending on where you are in the current like ideological pecking order, every sadist is a masochist and every masochist is a sadist, right? And I say that about particularly the MAGA thing, just because that's like the easiest example for us right now. But we could run this from the left, we could run this from the right in all these directions. I think Fromm was saying is you're going to find this wherever you look now, because we don't know who we are, and we are like open to like having someone decide who we are,
Hmm.
or to find ourselves in hurting other people.
Totally.
Like
Totally.
that's the real risk right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you go to the other side of the aisle, right? I mean, it's the same thing of gender, religion, all of that stuff ends up becoming a way of kind of a humility ritual.
Right. Right. Exactly. Right. No, no, like and there's yeah, there's so much that you can point to now that's just sort of a humiliation ritual, right? Is like I'm gonna do whatever the hell I want, and you will remain allied to me because I say who you are, right?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so on the one hand, it hurts, but when it hurts, it's evidence that you're not burdened by your own self, that you're attached to this other thing, right?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? But then it also carries with it this ability to feel better than other people who are not this.
Yes.
Right. So there's sadism and masochism wrapped together there. You see what I mean?
Yep.
Um, yeah, which I think, I mean, it's not hard to see that in the political environment today, right?
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Well, I think also what Fromm is saying here is not the authoritarian personality is just those who want power, but it's within all of us the potential of becoming the authoritarian personality and becoming sadomasochists. Right.
We all have a sadomasochistic strain after Copernicus, right? Like
Right.
after the rise of modernity, when suddenly we can't count on the primary bonds to hold like they used to. We are all burdened with the anxiety of responsibility for ourselves. And one of the temptations to get out of that is this kind of sadomasochism,
Hmm.
right? Right.
Yeah.
You know, and you can like you can really see it. And what he does, you know, with the Nazis is like on the one hand, like you've got this like strong authoritarian leader, well, the strong leader in Hitler, right? Uh, and you can just give over your personality to the Nazi Party now, and whatever it does is right. And I won't dare to think for myself, even if it humiliates me, even if it runs against my conscience. That just shows how bad I am, and I can like give myself up to that. But then at the same time, you get all these like minorities that you can hate now, right?
Hmm.
And do
Hmm.
terrible things to. Do you see that? Okay, now look, I'm not drawing a straight line from Nazism to MAGA or anything
Sure.
like as crass as all that, but you can see the same sadomasochistic tendency there. You see what I mean?
Yes.
And we could come up with like recent examples from the left too. Like I think the Obama thing was no less a sadomasochistic cult than
Totally.
the MAGA thing, right?
Yeah.
You see what I mean, right? But I also think what for Fromm, I think something like I hate to even call it the left because I don't think we have an actual left or like something what like Fromm would identify as the left, right?
Yeah.
I don't think we have that in America right now. Okay. But I'll use the term left, right? I think when we talk about the American left, it's something closer to what Fromm calls uh automaton conformity,
Yeah.
right? I think it's
Yeah.
closer there, right? So should we maybe go in that direction?
Yeah. We can,
Yeah.
so the way that chapter,
Do you want to do destructiveness first? I know
let's do
that was
destructiveness. Yeah.
yeah. So I know you were excited about destructiveness.
Yes.
I was really into sadomasochism, which probably says oh so much, right? But
Yeah, so the destructiveness is interesting because really what he's talking about here is it's the same feelings of anxiety, of powerlessness, of aloneness, but rather than trying to give up oneself to something else, you try to destroy it, and in so doing, you destroy your own self. Right, so you're led by anger into destroying either the power structures or whatever it is. But to be completely honest, what I read in that is just destroy everything. It's kind of
yeah,
just pure anarchy.
the
There's a
hate breed
line in
song,
there. Say it again.
the hate breed song, destroy everything.
Totally, totally.
Yeah, yeah,
But he says destructiveness is the outcome of unlived life, right?
yeah,
And so we often don't think about in terms, I immediately went to my background of getting into, mosh pits and just literally throwing bottles at cars and all the
yeah,
stuff that kids do whenever they listen to heavy metal. But there was an anger in there because everyone realized like we missed out on something. There was
yeah.
something deeply human that every single one of us were
That's a
angry
good point.
about because we didn't get it. And so there was
Yeah,
this unlived life. nobody was recognizing that that's where the anger was from. They were blaming people and all kinds of stuff, and maybe some people needed to be blamed, but it was a destructiveness based off of just like boredom. Like it was just like there's
Yeah.
nothing there's no point to any of this. Life is kind of meaningless, so let's just destroy stuff, and who freaking cares? And so to him, it seems to me that like what he's talking about here is similar to what you might find on both the right and the left in regard to like violence. Like now
Yeah.
it's time to just get violent, because clearly this isn't providing the meaning that we want.
Yeah. It's, I was thinking like very like, because when he's writing this, like 1950s, James Dean, Rebel Without a Cause, right?
Totally.
Like
Totally.
I'm rebelling. I don't even know what the hell I'm rebelling against. Right.
Exactly.
Okay. And it's because the circumstances of oppression have become so heavy, right?
Yeah.
That I have no sense of myself as an individual in this circumstance. So then I'm willing just to destroy everything around me, including myself, because I have nothing left to lose, right? Because my life, and because like what Fromm means by life is he means like my life as a creative individual has
Yep.
been so stifled, right? It's been so stifled that uh, at least if I destroy myself and everything around me, I'm doing something, right?
Totally.
And so the way I read Fromm on this is that destructiveness is this like unhealthy stand-in for creativity,
Yes.
right? And I use creativity in the sense of not just originality, but like to actually create something, that meaningful work thing, like that, like being able to do something that's an expression of my distinctive human person, right?
Yes.
Like okay, and that Hegelian Marxist notion of work, right? And I think he looks around and he sees, yeah, like this kind of like youthful destructiveness that's going to happen when the kids are given no room for them to express themselves as themselves, right?
Yep.
And he doesn't mean by that in like a frivolous finger painting sort of way. He means that
Right.
in a way that's actually humanely creative, right?
Yeah. It reminds me honestly of two things. One, remember the show Jackass? Like
Yeah,
that's absolutely the
yeah,
destructive
100%.
personality,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Myself and others and whatever it takes. But then also Fight Club.
yeah,
I immediately thought of like, we're the lost generation between wars, man. Nobody, and like, we're really pissed off about it. Like we don't
yeah,
we don't have our great war. Ours is a spiritual war. And
yeah,
guess what? It's devoid
yeah.
of anything worth meaning. So they
And
destroy everything.
think of it like by at that like how alienated it is already in that our only notion of real creative human activity is warfare then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like and I think Fromm would point that out, right? Um, that film is itself an expression of one of the very things he's diagnosing here. In that it, you know what I mean? It's only these people are so repressed that they can only see like higher like more interesting types of destruction are the only available that would be the ideal of human creativity, right?
Yes. Well,
Right.
it's
And that
interesting too because in
but,
that film you
I
have
like the Jackass example though, if I can
yeah.
go back real quick, because no, you keep on that. I'll come back to Jackass.
Well, I was going to say
Yeah.
the dialectic between the two characters of Edward Norton and Brad Pitt in that is that you have the automaton conformists at the
Yeah.
beginning, right? Edward Norton, and then the destructiveness of Brad Pitt showing up as two reactions to the freedom that they were given, but a freedom that had no meaning.
Had no meaning. Yeah. It's just destructive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, it's interesting. Like I never thought about much about Jackass before. Right. Um, but only a completely repressed society could enjoy Jackass.
Yeah. Oh,
You know what I mean?
absolutely.
Like
Yeah.
only a society that has an utterly repressed life drive, right, could be so into death drive. I think this is what Fromm would say
100%.
there, right? The only because Eros has been so stifled, right? Any meaningful
Yes.
expression of Eros is so stifled. Could you enjoy? And because what is Jackass? It is the most sadistic thing you could ever watch, right?
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? There's a Canadian show that my wife and I got into watching like man like 15, 20 years ago called Kenny and Splenny.
Oh, sure.
Have you seen it?
I've seen
Yeah.
it.
And it's hilarious, but eventually I couldn't watch it anymore because I'm
Yeah.
like, this is just flat out sadism.
Yes.
Right. Right. But why is that enjoyable to us? Well, maybe it's because we have authoritarian personality, right? And it just We enjoy seeing other people hurt because then we can imagine ourselves as consuming them. We don't have to see ourselves as separate from the world. Maybe
Mhm.
that's one
Mhm.
read on it. Maybe it's just pure destructiveness, right? Because we're so repressed. Just the idea of just wrecking something is better than nothing. Like nothing's
Yeah.
better than nothing, right? In a way like that, yeah. And so I think that the jackass example or the Kenny is funny example is really good of
Yeah.
what he's talking about there. Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, especially because then you end up with a generation of kids watching that and imitating it, right?
yeah,
Started doing it in their own life, really getting hurt.
yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I was just old enough when Jackass, like, hit it in the '90s to not try any of that crap. So
Yeah. Well, and it's even like, you think about like, I mean, when I was growing up, it was a totally normal thing for 16, 17-year-olds to like legit get alcohol poisoning on a very regular basis and potentially go to the hospital. A lot of kids where I'm from ended up getting in car wrecks because they were drinking and driving and doing all kinds of destructive shit. And nobody wanted to talk about the quiet part out loud of like,
Yep,
why are we doing this?
yep,
Why does a 16-year-old feel so destructive about himself that he wants to drink himself into an utter stupor and go to the hospital
yep.
and get his stomach pumped? Like
What was that?
that is a problem.
What's that '90s grunge song that was about that in Texas about I'm blanking on it. I'm sorry, I won't
Remember
waste
the
your time.
band? Yeah.
Yeah, I can't it'll come to me, right. Peppa, maybe it was the band? Anyway,
Okay.
it'll come to me, sorry. Or not,
But
we'll
yeah, I
see.
mean, daring each other to down a fifth of Jack within 30 minutes and that should concern people that this is a
Yeah.
serious problem.
I've always found, though, as a youngster who's not a stranger to it, the drinking oneself to the point of blackout as a very interesting thing, in that it's like what you're doing is you're rehearsing your death
Oh, 100%.
to 100%. Do
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like I so badly don't want to be me
Yep.
that I'm going to drink myself to the point of like turning off the part of my brain that's like my personality, right?
Totally.
You know what I mean? And once again, like you could see that as the ultimate masochism, right?
Yeah.
Or you could see it as destructiveness for its own sake. But both of them for Fromm are interesting because it's an avoidance of self,
Yes.
like an avoidance of the responsibility of being a free individual. Right.
Yep.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Um, okay, so let's talk about conformity. Okay.
Okay.
So in the previous chapter, Fromm does come out hard against the pretensions of like the Western capitalist world as having like anything like free markets, right?
Hmm.
Because he says, like, well, no, we're all like constantly hypnotized by advertising,
Hmm.
right? And he points out about how advertising, this is something I've thought for years and years, right? It's like advertising works by trying to circumvent your ability to make rational decisions.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So like when someone's selling beer and they have like the abstraction of the feminine body come out with the can of beer, right? Okay. Um it has nothing to do with
It ain't
whether
about
they're
the beer. Yeah.
about the beer. And we know literally what that's going to do. It's going to associate neural pathways between that beer and sexual arousal. So when you go to the store now and you see that beer, you're going to have the slightest subconscious sense of sexual arousal and you'll buy the beer, right? It's like when people like you'll watch some commercial and it'll just be stupid, have nothing to do with the product. People are always like, well, what does that have to do with the product? That's stupid. I'm like, yeah, but we're sitting here talking about that product now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, so your quirky, weird commercial, like Old Spice is the best on this, right? Like, right, like their
Totally.
quirky, weird commercial gets that product into your unconscious, right? Which will then circumvent your conscious ability to reason about it. That is what it's about. Okay. And so what Fromm argues in the book, and oh my gosh, like imagine if you could see what we see today, is he sees like modern marketing is a kind of mass hypnotism,
Hmm.
right? And the same people, Jacques Ellul is really good on this. Like the same people who, like developed the notion of modern political propaganda also all went to Madison Avenue after the war, right? To continue the propaganda, right?
Yep.
You see what I mean? And so in this now this fast forward to this section on conformity as an escape, right? He begins it by talking about hypnotism,
Hmm.
right? And this is okay. It, man, if you ever look into the legitimate literature on hypnotism, it's scary, right? Because you can be hypnotized to think all sorts of things, right? Or as Fromm points out here, are your own rationally grounded thoughts, right?
Yes.
And it will appear to you as much, right? Okay. In fact, it is not, right? It
Yeah.
is not. It is in fact something that was implanted in you by hypnotism, right? So he uses the hypnotism example to show, look, a lot of things that you think are your choices are not yours, or are you think are your own rationally grounded thoughts that you have good reasons to believe. You in fact do not have, or there may be such reasons, but they're not why you hold it because you've been hypnotized, right? And then he draws the analogy with advertising. So he's saying like we in the West are inundated with advertising. It's constantly hypnotizing us to think that somehow, this brand of coffee is objectively rationally better than this other brand of coffee, right?
Hmm.
And it feels to us as if we believe it based on reasons, but we don't, right?
Right.
It's being pushed around unconsciously, right? Then he goes in and he gives an example of like you can be made to feel certain things, right? He gives the example of someone leaving a party, really feeling like he had a good time, but then he goes home and starts having these like crazy dreams about everybody at the party being a Nazi, this stuff,
Yeah.
right? And it turns
Yeah.
out, look, what you've really told yourself you were feeling there, you weren't really feeling that,
Yeah.
right?
Or another example of a
You just
similar
had to
situation.
believe that because it
Yes.
was good for you. Yeah, right.
Well,
Keep going.
he's in the party and he's having fun and he's smiling and he's laughing, and then the minute he steps outside the door, just his face falls. He
Yeah.
goes into full sadness.
But in the
Right.
moment, it felt to him as though he were enjoying it, but he
Yep.
wasn't,
Yep.
right? Right. Okay. And then he gives an example of all these things where we really claim it's what we want to do, but you can really see that's not what we want to do. Whether it's like who you married is the example he uses, or what you do for a living, these things, it's like we can really be convinced that's what we want, but it's not what we want. Right.
Hmm. Hmm.
And all of this, he's trying to make this case is that the whole notion of individual freedom, okay, uh, could be co-opted into a grand hypnotic system, right? Which I
Absolutely.
think is what he's saying is what's going on in the modern West.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Right.
Well, and now, I mean, if he saw social media now, I mean,
Oh yeah.
gosh, that's just one big
Yeah.
hypnotic experiment.
Yeah. And so what's
Um,
the escape here is rather than like asking myself, like, what do I really think is true? What do I really feel? What do I really want? Is I can just kind of allow myself to have these things suggested to me by my environment now, right?
hmm. Hmm.
Which is constantly making suggestions to us, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and so think of it. This is a point that Deleuze and Guattari make is like the Western capitalist system has to like constantly break primary ties, right? So that
Yep.
people are open to suggestion, right?
Yep.
So that it can continue to like psyop us into thinking like, this is the meaning of our life, this product, right? And this is your point, right? So like what we have are proposals of products now, right? Or lifestyles as being our own creative endeavors that give us meaning, when in fact they're not. They're things that are imposed on us by the outside, right?
Yes.
And so this one's less, I think, an escape and more something being done to us, I think.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's also the inability of the person that conforms to be able to see that as a decision that I'm conforming, right? Like
Right.
you are in it, and you don't even have the ability to see outside of it.
Yeah.
Immediately, though, for me, I immediately thought of the invention of Saturday morning cartoons, which has
Yeah.
been going on for a long time,
Just to get
and
people
the
excited.
commercials meant for little kids, and
Yep.
how early this happens,
Yep.
right? Like you want this sugary cereal because little Johnny gets this cereal. Look how big and strong he is, right?
There was a great documentary that came out in the early 2000s called The Corporation.
Hmm.
And there's a social psychologist in that documentary who points out that most companies now, or many companies now, they want what they call brand identity by 2 years old.
Ugh. Yeah, that's crazy.
Right. Like they want you thinking you're a Nike kid by the time you're two.
That's pretty
Right.
disgusting, actually.
Like,
But
so then like how much free decision making is done in the marketplace?
yeah, yeah,
Very
totally.
little. Very little. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's also crazy to me. Like, and I've just noticed it more and more now is the amount of commercials for prescription drugs,
Yeah.
especially antidepressants and the like.
Yeah.
And how that used to be illegal. You couldn't put, commercials out there like that, but
Still legal here.
every single one of them is not pointing to logic and reason as a way to
Yeah.
to pick these things, or that you should talk to your therapist, or that somebody in your life that can help you, but rather, hey, you need this, as direct to consumer marketing about something that is a psychosomatic drug is crazy to me, like that.
Yeah.
And that this brand is going to make your life that much happier.
Yeah. I'm a,
Welcome to
I
Brave New
don't,
World.
like you, I don't watch a lot of commercial TV, right?
Yeah.
And pretty much the only time I watch commercial TV is when I'm like traveling and I'm like in a hotel room, and I'll like turn the TV on and I'm just shocked. Like every ad's for a drug.
It's
Right? Like, for a
crazy.
drug. And like you're right, like mostly psychoactive stuff, right?
Yes.
Um,
Welcome to Brave New World.
yeah, exactly. And a lot of them it's like if you're, and I'm not saying anyone shouldn't take their meds. I'm not saying
Right.
I don't,
Yeah.
right? Okay. But this sort of like the idea of advertising it so that you will then go and nag your doctor about it, right? Rather than asking your doctor, what would be best for me, right?
Totally.
And what
Totally.
reasons can you give me for that, right? Uh, you know what I mean? But a lot of them are like, if the meds you're on aren't really doing it for you, you can add this one to the cocktail, right? So it's like going like
Yes.
second order, right?
Yeah.
Do you,
Yeah. Well, and to your
and-
point, I mean, I have nothing against whatever people need to take, antidepressants,
yeah,
whatever it might be. But I do have a problem that not only is that direct to consumer marketing, but then also there's a kickback to the doctors that prescribe it.
yeah.
Right. Like
And
that to
in
me is a
fairness to
major problem.
doctors, it's like, it like how objective can you 100% guarantee you're being when you know you've got skin in the game, right?
Yep.
You know what
Yep.
I mean? Same thing with like in our profession, like when you get it, like this happens, like some professors have a piece of the textbook, right? How objective can you be in making that decision?
Yep.
Right?
Exactly.
By the way, that's why I don't use any of my own books in my classes. Just
There you go.
okay, right. But like how objective are you being then, right?
Exactly.
In Fromm's point here is like, look, no one can guarantee this because it's like we're all hypnotized to some level,
Exactly.
right? Right.
Yeah, it's interesting too. There's a point where he says, so I have the PDF version, but he's talking about the person that will, of course, he calls them the average newspaper reader, which I would add
Yeah,
in
I know.
like
I
the
love
social
that.
media
Yeah,
watcher or whatever you
yeah.
call it. But he says he will give
Or
you
we're on
as,
Facebook.
yes, he says he will give you as his opinion a more or less exact account of what he has read. And yet, and this is the essential point, he believes that what he is saying is the result of his own thinking. If he lives in a small community where political opinions are handed down from father to son, his own opinion may be governed far more by, or than he would for a moment believe that the lingering authority of a strict parent. So he's
Yeah,
seeing the newspaper as basically bad.
yeah. Well, and d- don't tell me you don't catch yourself doing this every day. Like I catch myself
Oh.
doing this every day. Like someone will bring up a topic and I'll be like, "Well, and I'll spout out some wisdom on it, and then afterwards think, you know what, man, you just heard that on Breaking Points.
Exactly.
I was not you. Did you just? Did you know what I mean? You just so happened to hear like Ryan Grimm say that, right? They're not Ryan Grimm, right? But you know what I mean? It's like that wasn't your view. You just heard that today.
Exactly.
Right? Right?
Yep.
Yeah. Like that happens all the time. I catch myself doing that all the time.
Totally. Yeah. Well, and the
Totally.
sad part now is too, is it's opinions based off pure headlines. There's not even
Yeah.
actual substance to any of the opinions. It's just pure headline.
Yeah. You
Right.
didn't even click on Ryan Grimm's link. You just read the link.
Right. You just saw it.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right. And I'll admit, man, I do it. I do it.
Yeah.
you know, right? I
Well,
do it.
and the crazy thing about this too, and I love the term that he uses the term automaton, because it's literally a losing of the self, right? That's what he's talking
Yeah.
about here. And I think that, and if we're talking about political spectrum on both sides of it, is like there is certain mores that you're supposed to live by. There's certain beliefs that you're supposed to live by. And if you don't fall within that sphere, you don't belong here.
Yeah.
Literally, like feeling
Yeah.
that way, right? So if you have a different opinion about immigrants, or if you have a different opinion about sexual orientation or whatever, that you don't fall into whatever the sphere might be on whatever spectrum you're on, well, then you're not part of the crowd, right?
Yeah.
And so become the automaton, fall in line. And
Yeah.
what he's saying is like break free from that. Like
Yeah.
you're gonna find much more meaning and much more
Yeah.
like
That might
actual
be where
love outside of that.
that's where the escape mechanism is that
Mm-hmm.
like to realize in one way or the other, it's all psyop. It's all ad. Right. It's all marketing. right?
Yes.
And even if these things are true, even if there are reasons for them, that's not your grounds for holding them. What's holding you to them is that you've been hypnotized. And it's to realize that and then to separate yourself from it and then actually do a creative endeavor to figure it out. Right.
Yes.
Right. Right. And of course, so once you admit that you can be hypnotized, you always worry about that. Right.
Totally.
But therein lies the anxiety, right? And I don't think Fromm is saying here there's ever a return like your creative endeavor is done such that you're like anxiety free, right?
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
like he says again, you're not getting your primary bonds back. Ain't happening.
Yes.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Something interesting that, and this is kind of returning back to our previous episode, but I just started Robinson Crusoe last night, and I haven't read this probably in 30 years. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
And but I picked it up and I remembered, oh my gosh, he is talking about the angst of the middle class, the new middle class in the 1600s that now they don't have the anxieties of the upper class, and they don't have like
They're
the
alone.
struggles of the lower class, but they have the anxieties of the freedom of
They're
being a middle
alone.
class people. And what does he do? I got to go to the sea.
Yeah.
Right? I can't stay here. I got to I got to like find adventure. I got to do this thing until
Yeah.
he loses himself.
Yeah.
And it's pretty, I'm like, man, now I'm going to see Fromm and everything.
Yeah. Or just think of Moby Dick, man. Call me Ishmael. I'm forsaken. Right.
Exactly.
And whenever I feel like knocking hats off, what do? I go to the sea. Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Crazy.
Yeah. 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 Cool. And so, so we do encourage the listener, the Legion, to go and just at least read that chapter on the authoritarian personality, and then ask yourself if it doesn't like very constructively indict us, right?
Yes.
Right, right. And by us, I mean we moderns, right?
Totally. Totally.
Yep.
Yeah. We can't put that back in the bag.
No. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and I think, and of course, we can kind of very quickly talk about the section on psychology of Nazism, but I think you kind of already touched on the main point of it, which
Yeah.
was that you've got a very angsty lower middle class
Yep.
who was disillusioned by World War One and disillusioned by the economic system that they're kind of forced into, and the sadomasochistic side takes over, and they're like, this guy showed up and he's telling us, we're going to make Germany great, right? So why wouldn't I tag along with that, regardless of what their plan might be, and regardless of the
We
fact
can
that they've
be
started
him.
taking over the countries? Do
We
what?
can be him. We can be him. Right.
Exactly.
And he gives us lots of targets for
Yep.
people that we can let him if we let him consume us, right? Masochism. He'll give us plenty of targets that we can consume, right?
Yep.
And then since we're all consuming, right? We're never going to be individuals on our own, okay? And then we're off the hook of the loss of our primary ties, right? There it is, right? Right.
Yep.
Yeah, right. And then you can see what he does in the last chapter on democracy and freedom is the similar temptation, like so-called democracy, so-called freedom, could really just be making the world safe for hypnotism, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Which again, I think you can see that in what goes on in post-war 1950s Western consumerism, right? Okay. And what does that result in? Okay, like people always miss this. They talk about the greatest generation, right? Well, what did their kids do? Right? Their kids wrecked everything
Yep.
on some renderings, right? Like they went
Yep.
out and wrecked a bunch of stuff, right? Why? Because the hypnotism like left them repressed and they didn't want it. Okay, of course they wreck stuff and they become the worst consumerists ever, but
They
it's
become the
politics.
man, actually.
They
Yeah.
become the man. Yeah. You know what I mean? Um, but I digress, right? Uh, you know what I mean? And so like you can see this stuff plays out kind of as Fromm would have predicted, right?
Totally.
And
Yeah.
we can see ourselves in another cycle of it, right? Like right now, I think we're in a pretty sadomasochistic cycle of it, right?
Yeah. I have to admit though, I love his final diagnosis of what to do, right? To
Yeah.
really try to see those things that are trying to control you, try to hypnotize you, and find meaningful community and meaningful work. I mean, I just don't
Yeah.
like that is an amazing answer to the problem, to be completely honest. Because if
100%.
you have
Yeah.
meaningful work, you're going to keep yourself from being distracted by all this other nonsense, right?
Yes.
Like you've got your creative thing that you can grow on, and then you've got your kind of inner circle of community that you care about, and you're like, everything else is out of my control, so who cares? Like
Okay.
I'm going to care about what I can care about.
Yeah. Like I don't come out of this book politically energized.
No, no,
You know
I
what I
do
mean?
not.
Right. And of
No.
course, I may be one who has sort of a disdain for political energy at this point, right? Um, yeah, I come out of this book thinking, yeah, I'm gonna keep working on the jujitsu,
Yeah,
and I'm gonna keep talking to my buddy Jared,
exactly.
right?
Yeah,
Who will tell me if he thinks I've fallen into a hypnotic spell, right? So
exactly.
yeah,
Absolutely.
cool, man. All right, well
Well,
let's wrap that there because we have a little something special we're gonna work on next.
yes, absolutely. But as
Nice.
always, like, subscribe. Appreciate you
Like,
guys very
subscribe,
much.
like, you know, look into my eyes.
I don't have a stop. I don't have a
Yeah,
watch, but yeah.
yeah. Like, like and subscribe. Like and subscribe.
There we go. Awesome, man.
I'm glad we ended on that note.
Cool. All right, man. Till next time.